So today I wanted to do a painting demo for you. And you haven't gotten this yet, but if you watch the video, you'll see that you are going to get a palette. But the difference from this year to previous years is your palette will be in a bag and your paint will be reused class after class after class. So when you get your paint, you also have to make sure you get a bag and you write your name on it. And this is really hard to see, but I also put a damp paper towel over top of my paint every single class. That also protects the paint from getting on the bag. It will waste a little, so you'll see me, I'm over the garbage, I'm peeling some off. I wasted a little bit, but I still have a lot of my colors there for next time. The other thing that's really hard to see is the fact that on my tray is a piece of wax paper. So when you get the styrofoam tray, it's really just to hold your wax paper because we are going to reuse these trays and these bags over and over and over. We are not getting rid of them. We are not throwing them away. So use your wax paper to put your paint on because it's easier than the tray. So I have my tray. I'm a righty, so I also put on the right an extra paper towel. I have my cup with water. You can take as many brushes as you want, as long as you wash the brushes at the end of the period. And I put it all on the right. I'm gonna put my painting on the left. It's a little awkward with all your stuff, but do the best you can. And I do wanna remind you guys, if it's hard to like really fit with the big canvases, I don't have enough for everybody. I'm so sorry, but we do have over by the window, the standing easels. This will help with space. If you wanna work at a countertop, you can totally get a standing easel and that will help for sure. So don't forget that option. The other thing I wanted to tell you guys is that we are using acrylic paint, and acrylic paint stains worse than printmaking ink. So definitely wear your smock. If you have long sleeves, definitely push them up, especially during cleanup. And acrylic paint, if it gets on the table, when it's wet, it wipes right off. But if it dries on the table, it's hard to get off the table. If it dries on the cup, it's hard to get off the cup. If it dries on the brush, it kills the brush. So please, during cleanup, wash the table, wash the container, wash the brushes, wash everything really, really good. Because I love acrylic paint, but it is very permanent. You'll have these paintings forever, which is great, but you don't want to have stains on your clothes forever. And I certainly don't want to be scrubbing the table. So this is a little controversial. It's different with every kind of painting you do. But for me, with the animal paintings, I do start with the darkest areas. And I say that because some painters will argue with me, start with the lightest areas. If I was doing a landscape, I would start with the background. But for my animals, personally, I find it easiest to squint and I use the darkest areas. I also kept my grid on. That is completely optional, but remind me, I want to show you why I did that in a minute. So here we go. I'm going to start painting. And I do not like to paint with the colors straight out of the bottles. So even though most people would say a tiger's stripes are black, I'm going to pull some black out of my palette and I'm going to mix it with a little blue because why not? This is your artwork. And my brush, it's hard to see, got goopy. It's like goopy all over it, which is great sometimes. But if you want to do like nice tiger stripes or details, I spin the brush, or sometimes I call this, I kind of pet it on my palette, and then I can go ahead and start to paint the darker areas. You don't want to use a lot of water with acrylic paint, but you can add like a tiny little drop if you need it to spread a little bit more. And then you go ahead and you start painting your darkest areas. For me, the tiger stripes are pretty easy because they're one color. However, a lot of artists start to ask me, well, what about blending? What about value with paint? So going from one color to the next. So when you're doing value, here's my tip for you guys. I usually start with white if it's lighter. So for example, I have on my tiger, it kind of goes to different color oranges here. I start with white and I put some white on there just to give it a little bit of, it's called viscosity. It kind of moves more. And then while the paint is wet, you can either mix your color directly on the canvas. Again, I'm mixing colors together and I'm not just using them straight out of the bottle, or you can mix them right here on the canvas. I kind of blend when it's wet. So it's hard to see. I will hold it up so you guys can see. But if your paint is wet, it's a lot easier to go from light to dark. And when you're doing that, it's okay to show some brush strokes. You can kind of flick your brush. You can go back and forth. It depends on your animal. If you have like an elephant, I would kind of go back and forth. With a fuzzy fur one, I kind of jump up and down. But the best way to blend, if you want to blend, you don't have to, but the best way to blend is to do it when it's wet. Sometimes I hate blending and I'd rather have different areas of color, and that's okay too. I want to show you guys just real quick 2 little side tricks. So I got to go grab the bottle of paint. And before I do that, here's my first side trick. You don't have to do this, but the reason I kept the clear transparent grid on is for color testing. Sometimes I hate keeping colors the same. I completely change them. I do rainbows, whatever. Sometimes I want the colors to be the same. So here's a little trick. If you're trying to color match, you can dot your paint onto the clear grid, see if the color's the same, and then just kind of wipe it off. So that's why I keep the grid. If you don't want to do that, you can take the grid off, you can keep it separate, you can put it together. Maybe it changes every day, but don't throw away your photo reference. Last thing I want to say before we're done, just a weird side note with the paint. The paint, as you use it, will get air in it. So there will be a little air in the top. If you just flip this over, open it up and squeeze, paint will come out, but there will also be a lot of air in there. So what happens?
It's gonna splat.
It's gonna splat. Yeah, it's kind of like a fart and it goes everywhere. So before you actually get your paint out and open it up, when it's closed, I kind of do this weird upside down. I just go, and you can't hear it, but you'll feel it when it's in your hand. I felt all the paint go from like up here, which is the bottom, down to the cap, and hopefully you got rid of the air bubbles. Then I open it carefully, and you'll do this over at the paint station, and you squeeze just a little bit on, okay? I also grabbed this. I know I said one more thing. I'm terrible. If your paint gets too out of control on your palette, no big deal. Like, I have out of control palettes all the time. But my other class was asking me, you can use these palette knives, and sometimes I just scrape the paint back into a pile if I want it in a pile. Cleanup time. Make sure you wash everything really, really good. You guys know that, but get your wet paper towel. I get a fresh one each time. Put it like a blanket on my palette. Palette goes in your bag, because now it's not like 6th grade where you mix the perfect color and I was like, okay, clean up, throw it away, and you were like, no. Now you can put your perfect color in the bag to save it. The bags are really big. I'm sorry, the next size down was too small, so they're like really big. So you close it, you tuck it under, and don't stick it right on top of your wet paint. You guys have enough room on your drying rack. You put canvas on one side, palette right next to it. Maybe this is on the palette, maybe it's on the back, but do a good job cleaning up, and then make sure you wipe everything off, including your hands. Check your stool, check everything. Okay, guys? If your name is on the board, do that first, but when you're ready to paint, you can get started. Thank you, guys.